All right, what's going on? It's Matt here, and I'm with Chris Leone. He is one of my real estate mentors. I learned a lot from him. Back when I met him, he was actually the president of the Chicago Area Real Estate Investors Associations. We call it CREA for short. And I thought that his story was kind of, what's the right word? Like
Unorthodox?
Unorthodox, like motivating, kind of like just kind of like out there. And your enthusiasm was like really kind of infectious. I thought that was pretty great. But yeah, without further ado, I want to let you tell your story from your words, and
Sure.
I want to get everybody to see what you're about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Matt. Yeah, thank you very much for letting me come on and do this. So this is exciting. No one's ever really wanted to hear my story, so I guess...
I don't know why not.
Well, the funny thing is that I'm not so much of the... As though ostentatious as I am as an individual, personality-wise, I'm not one to gloat and tell everybody, hey, I do this, and this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too.
It's not so much of an ego thing for me, but I'm more results-driven as far as that goes. But to answer your question, well, let me ask you this. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Took a hit of that J.
Kind of sick right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm under the weather. Strike out that hit that J thing.
Yeah.
No, but effectively, my story is I was a young kid like anyone else. Became super ambitious. Grew up middle class. Great parents. Took very good care of me. No question. I would say that grew up living a life where without need necessarily. I mean, when it came to like Sega Genesis, Nintendo, 64, all that. I mean, we had those things. It was all great. But that was the problem, is that we grew up in a world where, or at least in my home life, that parents worked really hard and they fought to give us those things, but it didn't really teach me anything, you know what I mean? So I grew up, remember, 13, 14, 15, 16, like very incapable, not knowing how to do anything. Like the toilet started overflowing. It's like, and I guess that as a 14-year-old, you shouldn't necessarily know, but I just remember growing up, even through high school, feeling very incapable, not knowing certain things on how to handle things, just because I feel like things were effectively given to me.
Yeah.
But additionally, I mean, even though we had nice things, I mean, I still feel like we grew up poor.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a nice house and things like that, but we were house poor. My parents built a house that was like very, very nice, but we didn't have nice things inside the house. Some things, but you know, you'd see one room with nothing in it. Like, how? Why?
No vacations or anything.
No, yeah, we did, but my mom worked for the airlines. So we did, but life was different. It's just not bad at all. It was good. But needless to say, long time ago, when I'm 31 today, so about 10, 12 years ago, I did get into a little bit of trouble with Johnny Law. Found myself getting out of that scenario, not knowing what to do. I mean, all options of working, working particular jobs was out of the question. At that moment, I wasn't in college, so it was a matter of deciding what I wanted to do with my life. I did decide to go the college route. I didn't end up working out for myself, so I ended up pulling myself out. At that moment in my life, I was paying for everything, and I did really well, but I just found that it wasn't for me. So I got into the sales business. I started selling cell phones, and I've done almost every other sales job that you can imagine. That's a little bit of, what do they call it? It starts with an E. It's not extravagant. It's like not an embellishment, but like, you know, I mean, I've done a lot. I guess to say I've done a lot of different things, but I really found my niche in selling when I was selling cell phones and stuff. I was the guy in the kiosk, sitting in the kiosk, bringing people in out of nowhere, and all of a sudden selling your whole family 6 lines.
Yeah.
I mean, it was it was fun. It was fun. But needless to say, during this time frame, I was probably about 19 years old, 20, 21 in that time frame. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's really where the story starts. I remember when I was 17, I was reading books, so I'm, not 20 years old or so, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad kind of changed my mind frame to the point where you didn't know what was what. Yeah. You just like, oh my God, there's this whole other world that's in there. So trying to emulate that as much as possible became an everyday sort of thing, but unrealistic and almost unable to obtain. because you see the path, but you don't see the path. You know what I'm saying? It's like driving with and all the rain's hitting you. It's like you only know the path you're going because you see the yellow lines.
Kind of zen-like. Kind of.
Absolutely, yeah. So holistic.
Yeah.
No, I like that word.
Yeah.
No, so to tie this back up, sorry, I'm kind of long-winded. There was the path in which I wanted to walk upon, and I didn't see the exact path. So the first instance I ever had, I was selling cell phones in Woodfield Mall, selling T-Mobile at the time. An Indian guy by the name of Richard Peters comes by, and we're talking, and we're just BSing. I'm telling him about Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think this guy's hooked up in the real estate business. Long story short, he ends up hooking up with me one weekend and shows me a 4-flat that he's building. So, and then he proposes to sell it to me. And then from there, it just became this cycle of like, holy cow, this can be really possible. So this was actually in about 06, 07, I want to say. And this guy's building a 4-flat. He wants to sell it to me. He wants to give me $10,000 at close and sell it to me like with owner financing or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I just remember going through that process, going to physically seeing it. I mean, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It said to do this. It said to do that. And I couldn't believe it. I ended up backing out of that deal.
Yeah.
I ended up not doing it. This guy went so far as to letting me drive. Like, we went to the place to go sign papers, and he gave me the keys to his BMW, and he said, drive back to the unit, see what it feels like. I mean, this guy was so good.
Yeah, no,
he was
slick,
good.
Man.
I mean, and I drove, I'm like, man, this is what it feels like to drive a 740 IL. I mean, goddamn.
Yeah.
You know, so we went back, but needless to say, I ended up backing out of the deal. It didn't feel comfortable to me. He was hooked up with a group in the area which they were promoting education and trying to help people become more. I don't want to drop names in particular. It don't matter, but he was in that thing, and that was okay. And I attended a lot of those, and they were very motivational. But that's kind of like all where it started with me. So like back in like 06, at that time, and it was exciting and. For all the right reasons and all the wrong reasons. Right. But needless to say, I ended up just continuing on that path, just being driven to the fact like, hey, I want to own rental real estate. I mean, that's what Robert Kiyosaki says. So I should do that. I should create this passive income, right?
Yeah.
So it just got to the point where I just kept sticking to my guns. I met some different people, actually the founders of the Chicago area REIA. And not knowing that at the time, and they had encouraged me to kind of keep coming back and keep attending. The first time I ever went there, I actually had found someone that I wanted to be mentored by. I just like instinctually knew this. But you don't go on like, hey, be my mentor.
It doesn't like, it naturally kind of progresses. You don't just kind of be like, hey, this person.
Absolutely, but this individual would ask questions in a certain way, and it's like, I mean, when he asked a question, it hit.
Yeah.
Like damn.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So I feel like I'd get knocked in the teeth every time they'd ask a question. So I don't know why. I was a glutton for punishment or something. I kept coming back. I remember my first meeting, I dropped my $100 check. I became a member of the organization, and I just kept coming back. And I would figure out ways to work with people. I'd work for free. Anything I could do to be around these people doing this business is what I did. It got to the point where someone had, the guy told me, hey, why don't you become a real estate agent? And I said, kind of seems ass backwards to wanting to invest in real estate, but I you know what, who am I to tell someone who's been doing this business for so long that this is not the path? So behind the scenes, while I was just working dead-end jobs, saving money, building up my credit, I ended up getting my real estate license. I went back and I told them like, hey, I got my license, and they were pretty surprised because that was kind of on a whim. Didn't expect anyone to just tell them to do that and just
do it,
and come back with it. So became a real estate agent, actually found out that they managed an office. At the time, I was a board member of the Chicago area REIA too, so I think I've been a board member of them for like about 7 years total. Just became, it just started from there.
It just kind of went right there.
And then from there, I just kind of figured out that, man, this is, is with respect to selling in real estate and then figuring out how to buy property. I mean, this is my life, and I love it.
So he definitely progressed from, you selling cell phones and then kind of
vacuum cleaners
and stuff. Oh man, I remember like there was like that one time when I went to like some of those vacuum cleaner people, whatever.
Kirby, man.
Yeah, Kirby.
Oh
man,
dude.
yeah.
I walk in that, open that door, I throw dirt on the ground, man, on purpose. You know?
Yeah, I remember that stuff. But yeah, so I mean, now you're at the point where you got multiple properties,
yep.
and this is what you do full time, and then also what you do is you help other people with finding properties for themselves and kind of replicating the system.
Absolutely, yeah. So there is a system in place that I was taught, so I have that down in terms of, and it's an ever going practice. You know what I mean? There's system guidelines in place of what I know how to do and the procedures in which, but you know, is working with me. I mean, I'm kind of like here, and that's like I can go up and down the path. So
yeah, you got to be adaptable and flexible.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I got a couple points here. Some of the main points that I think people always ask is,
sure.
especially with like the real estate crash that happened recently. I know a lot of people lost money with real estate. And I just wanted to hear your viewpoint on why you got into real estate, why you think it's like a secure thing that you put all of your eggs in one basket, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if you think about it, I read a long time ago. There's a quote by some guy. I don't know who said it. It's from the early 1900s, late 1800s, basically saying that the most wealth that was ever created, and this is me horribly paraphrasing this, but the most wealth that was ever created was owning real estate. Some guy said something to that effect.
Yeah.
Right. You read all the different books. I mean, you choose which direction in anything you want to go in life, right? I mean, the same feeling that I can have about real estate, the same person can have about Bitcoin, can have about gold, can have about building a business. Call it what you want. But if you look at this, if you look at the larger points of real estate, right? Yeah. That number one, God ain't making any more of it. Yeah. Unless you're in Dubai and they're like throwing dirt in the damn, in the sand.
They're like vibrating the sand to like condense.
Whatever the hell they're doing, I don't know how they. I mean, that's cool, but I mean, that's not land. I mean, you know how much expensive that would be, but for the most part, right? God ain't making any more of it, so right, it falls into the whole law of supply and demand, right? Yeah. Less supply, higher demand, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone needs a place to live. Yeah. Everyone needs shelter, and it falls into the four basic categories of everyone's necessities, right? Which is food, water, shelter, and clothing. Mm-hmm. So I think if you go in any of those categories, minus clothing, because that can be kind of like, don't get me wrong, there's a place for all of that, but I don't want to like drop the FUBUs of the world. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's great, but basically people just need, people need a shirt on their back. By the way, I got this shirt for $1.99 with a $1.99 rebate, fam. What? That's a nice shirt too, by the way.
About saving it. Yeah, no, I like to dress nice.
Woo! Come on now.
Yeah. So I wanted to kind of put a point out there. When I was at one of the meetings, I thought it was really funny. One of the guys asked, I think you were on the board with like Ben and I think Jim.
Okay, so on the panel.
Yeah, on the panel, yeah. And then one guy asked, he's like, "Oh, has anybody had their rent drop like over the time that they've had it?" And like literally it's like a room of like 75, 80 people or like that, and like nobody raised their hand. And I was just like, wow, okay.
Well, it kind of falls into the whole supply and demand thing, right? I mean, there's not like there's any more of it being created in terms of land in general, right? Buildings can be dropped, multifamilies can be erected, right? You can shift, but you can't necessarily change an entire outcome of a geographical area for the most part, unless it's like something catastrophic really happened. Yeah. So, I mean, in all the times, rent just keeps going up, and right now we're a nation of renters, and that's where it's coming. That's where it's coming to. We're going to turn into Europe, where less than X amount of percent of the people are going to own homes, because it's actually not as convenient as people think it really is.
Yeah, if you want to like pick up and move, you have to.
It's by no means the American dream, in my opinion. I think that's a bureaucratical thing that someone made to make people, to encourage the idea of owning homes.
Yeah,
and that is. I think the American dream is freedom more than anything. It's just being able to do what you want, when you want, how you want. But when it comes to housing, I don't know.
Yeah, renting. Yeah, that's what a lot of rich people. When they have like their $1 million house, and like people are like Ty Lopez, they're like, "Oh, his house is up for rent," and it's like, he rents it out because he's not using it at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
stuff
sure.
like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different. I mean, I don't know.
There's a huge tax benefit in that too, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for example, like for me, like as a real estate agent, and if I ever wanted to host a party, I could apply all the costs to doing that and deduct it, prorated over the course of the year, and effectively include my house as part of my business expenses.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a CPA, and I'm not telling you should do, but I'm not saying I do, and I don't do that actually. But there's all these interesting ways that you can do things, especially with real estate, and anything that has a super high cost. You want to try to leverage that in a way that's going to benefit whatever your scenario is.
I gotcha. Cool. So I think we kind of hit that one. So yeah, the other thing that I think people are worried about with investing in real estate is the time commitment that they have to put into it. Is that some people think that they have to like fix up everything. They see the HGTV and they're just like, damn, like, I don't want to get into that. Yeah. So I mean,
it's really misleading that whole thing, and everyone knows that, right? Let's call a spade for what it is.
Yeah.
But and you learn as you will. I mean, you'll take the hard route or you'll take the easy route. I can tell you, like on my very first deal, I bought a place for $45,000, put $4,500 down, went into it, and looking at it today, as with the knowledge that I have today, I should have never done anything really to it, anything major to it. But because I'm the kind of guy that takes the hard route and everything, I ended up ripping the whole thing apart and taking 5 months to get the unit turned over. From the moment I bought it. And like I said, if I look back on it today, I would have never done that. So, $4,500 in down payments, I'm paying $752.51 a month for 5 months while it's down. Plus, I had like $3,200 in materials. I mean, and virtually no money. I mean, how the hell I was doing this? Just hustling, selling this, selling that, trying to slang real estate, anything I could do to keep those payments going, so that way I wouldn't make bad on my payment. But you can do as much or as little as you want, but I think it's important to work with a professional in some respect that can tell you, hey, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. But the bottom line, I mean, aside from all of that, if you're going to get into this business, it would behoove you to not understand basics of operating a home, managing property, right? Understanding how to maintain your appliances, how do you take care of a fireplace if you have one, washers and dryers, your furnace, your water heater. I mean, those basic things, electric, plumbing.
And they're not complicated at all. I mean, it's just like really kind of simple stuff, and you can learn that stuff.
When you really boil it down and you watch, I mean, with YouTube nowadays, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, it's just, I consider myself a YouTube landlord. I mean, no kidding. I mean, anytime I've ever had a problem, seriously, I've gone to YouTube. I've looked. There's some other schmuck out there that's had the same problem, and he wanted to document it, and it helped me exceedingly. So I mean, I've fixed furnaces, I fixed plumbing issues, I actually just this morning I was fixing a freaking beverage cooler, like a wine cooler.
Okay.
Yeah, so I ended up finding that I had a starter relay that went bad. It wasn't allowing my compressor to do its job. Boom. You know what I mean? You spend 30, 40 minutes on YouTube and you figure out what your problem is, if you're willing to try, right? You have some tools, take it apart, you know what I mean? But too many people are focused on failing because they've never done it. And that's what stops more people more than anything is the not know-how. If you get rid of that, it doesn't matter how much time. You'll figure it out better.
So you can learn. It's definitely
100%. Just to add, I mean, when I started, I this is kind of a joke, but seriously, I didn't know which way to swing a hammer. I mean, it's a joke, but that's a kind of, you know what I mean, encapsulates how piss poor I was at virtually doing anything. But I'm telling you, I mean, the moment you need to figure out how to do something, like if I told you to rip out the carpet, take out the tile, move the cabinet, you'd figure it out because it's your money, it's your time, it's your future on the line. So if people would put those kinds of things in perspective in anything in their life, they'll figure it out a way. Because they have to.
Most definitely. So you can see, very motivating and kind of charismatic.
Oh man, watch out, man! I haven't even begun to start.
He'll get you. So yeah, I mean that kind of covers all the points there. So if somebody wanted to like reach out to you like through like an email or text or something like that.
Yeah. I mean the best way to reach out to me, I would say, I mean email is entirely fine. You can reach me at cleone.evergreen@gmail.com. That's my first initial last name .evergreen@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Snapchat too. I like to have a lot of fun with that. I'm not as active as I'd like to be, but I am at REI Chris Leone That's my username, and that's pretty much across the board with my Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and all that stuff.
Okay,
so
yeah.
those are the best ways to get at me.
Okay, and I'll definitely leave some links so you guys can get in contact with that. So yeah, that's about it for that. I don't know if you have any closing statements, but
ABC, baby, always be closing.
that's awesome. I love that. Copies for closers. All right, well, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, man. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Add that in there.
Add that in there. I'll put that as that's the thumbnail, man. That's the thumbnail.